I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, everybody, it's a rainy Wednesday in West Point, Mississippi. Welcome to the Mole Hole. We've got a really interesting audience here today. We've got some guests, Mac, kind of looking around the room. We've got royalty in here.
Oh man, get out of here!
Mr. Bill Duke.
I thought you were talking about me. I'm sorry.
Well, we do have Dudley Phelps sitting here with us. Mike, we've also got on the couch, we've got some professional trappers. We've got Karen and Dave Linkhart. And they're from Ohio, but they're working in Louisiana right now. And I think we were fortunate enough to get them to drive over. And I mean, I think everybody's going to learn. We're going to learn a lot about trapping today. We're going to get a lot of advice and counsel. And these guys are serious trappers. Bill, why don't you just take a second and tell us a little bit about them?
I'll be glad to. So Dave and Karen, when I was thinking about who we should get here that's really a good personality and can learn a lot from, I thought of them first. They've been together and trapping together for a long, long time. Dave's been trapping for 62 years. I don't know how old he is, but
I started at 11.
I bet you started early.
He's got a great radio voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he looks like a trapper.
Well, fit the part.
Unusual combination, I know.
I don't think he's seen a razor blade for a long time. When's the last time you shaved?
August 1972.
It's been a while. I was negative 4 years old.
Wow. Yeah. Well, go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Dave's been a trapper for 62 years, has a degree in natural resources education, and his partner in life and his wife, Karen, she is right there by his side. She's been trapping with him since they started dating, and they just make a fantastic pair of trappers. We've known them in our family for a long time because they're involved with the National Trappers Association. They are the national and international affairs coordinator for the National Trappers Association. They live in Xenia, Ohio, and they farm grain, beef, buffalo. And as a team, I think they're just fantastic people to have with us.
Well, meeting them prior to this, I was just there's a lot of knowledge right here, I can tell you. And I don't know that I've ever met a husband and wife trapper team.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the great things about a husband and wife trapping team. They can bring other women into it that maybe hadn't had any experience with trapping, and they learn things from each other. I mean, I guess a man can teach his wife how to do something, but sometimes it's better. I know Karen's worked one-on-one with a lot of women trappers, and they learn sometimes better because they can get on that same level.
And Bill, I'm going to turn that around a little bit.
Yep.
Yes, the wife can learn from the husband, but the husband can learn from the wife too.
That too.
Yeah.
Yep.
My wife's listening. I've learned a lot.
Yeah, you've
I've
learned
learned
already.
a ton from my wife, Kelly.
Yeah,
Still learning every day.
Give us one example, Dudley.
I've learned that I'm apparently a pretty forgetful person. She's taught me that a lot.
Yeah, we could have talked. We could have. So look, let's park this just for 1 second. We got a little business to tend to first, and we always talk about blood on the biologic. We're kind of wrapping up hunting season here in Mississippi and across the South, guys. Y'all's hunting season probably been out for, I'm guessing, since Christmas.
We just had muzzleloader season.
Boy, I bet it's cold up there on that muzzle.
It is. Numbers were down a little bit. I saw the harvest report earlier today.
Well, we like to kind of call out a lot of the young people that are killing their first critters and whatnot. And so we got a few here. Maybe not everybody's their first critter, but boy, that I hope I don't mispronounce it. Kipton, France. I've been watching them on the Drury Outdoors for a long time. They're from Alabama, and so it's just I think that Steve's son. It's just a really neat looking deer. It was an old deer from that. They called him Pawpaw. But congratulations to Kipton. That's really
Good
a neat
job
deal.
on getting Pawpaw. That's awesome.
Yeah, Dudley, you want to tell us about Charlie?
Well, Charlie, I refer to him as Cuz. We kind of have a little inside joke, and we refer to each other, even though we're not related, we're cousins. But he's a good buddy of mine, and he killed a good buck the other day.
He sure did. That's not his first. But yeah, we're real proud of Charlie.
Proud of you, Charlie.
I wanted to tell everybody. Now, Bill, you get a kick out of this. Nobody else in the room knows about this. Mac's looking at me like, "What's?" We have a new phone number here, and it's designed so people listening to the podcast can call in with ideas about podcast ideas, or television show ideas, magazine ideas, anything along those lines. So you can call 662-495-9264 and leave us an idea. How great is that? That's a pretty good idea, Dudley.
Yeah.
So instead of email, you just leave your voice, and then we might even use your voice to explain what we're about to talk about, if you leave a good enough little message for us. So it's 662-495-9264 if you want to leave us a podcast idea, and we'll be checking those out, and we'd appreciate it if you would. So with that done, I'm going to say let's talk trapping. And if we could, everybody's wearing NTA shirts. So what is National Trapping Association?
Yes, it is. National Trappers Association, been around for many years. And as Bill indicated, we work part-time for that organization as ambassadors for trapping. We've done lobbying in Washington, D.C. We've attended meetings in New York City in the fur industry. We do leadership training, different places around the country as well, and media relations. So those are just some of the things we do there. So National Trappers have been around a long time. Even longer, some of the state trapping associations have been around. We're also active in our state trappers, Ohio State Trappers Association. So that's just kind of our passion. Like he said, we farm for a living, and kind of semi-retired now. I'm getting old enough I can slow down on that, turn that over to some younger people, and have more time to trap. Fun. And to talk about trapping, too. And Karen and I have been doing that for the National Trappers Association since 2009, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah, it's a lot longer than what we realized.
Yeah.
So you went trapping with him on a date.
I did.
And fell in love with him, watching him set these.
So I first met him at 4-H camp. I was 12. He was 18. He was on staff as the naturalist. And my best friend and I followed him around, like all the little girls at camp. But then we would see him every year at our fair. And when I was in college, he asked a bunch of questions. I didn't know why.
Discreetly determining whether she was of legal age.
Yeah, that was smart.
And so we started dating right before trapping season. And he's like, I'm sorry, but like trapping season is important to me. And so if you want to see me, this is what I do. So our dates were going out on the line with him or working in the fur shed. And that first year I just watched, kind of took it all in. But I'm like, I can't just stand around and watch. If I'm going to spend my evenings out here. Now, I was still a college student and working to put myself through school, so I didn't have a lot of nights. But I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I have to do something. So teach me how to scrape muskrats. I think I could do that. And at that point, he decided maybe it was nice to have me around.
And one of the things that I did then, and I recommend anyone do if they want to get their spouse involved, make sure they're comfortable in this activity. I mean, we're trapping out there in the fall and the winter. It's cold, it's wet. And, okay, if you want to follow me around, I'm going to take you shopping. Now, that's always a plus when you say that to a woman, too, you know. But in this case, it was for practical gear. Yeah. And it was hard to find at that time. We're talking the 70s now. And a lot of women's clothing wasn't developed then at that time for outdoor activities.
So the first thing that he bought me was a snowmobile suit, because that was insulated and that's all you could find. And it was from the boys department, because I'm kind of size of a 12-year-old boy. And and then he bought me hip boots, but he wasn't sure how interested I was. So they weren't insulated hip boots that first couple of years. As I kept going with him and I started getting cold, and I'm like, maybe I don't want to do this because I'm cold. He goes, wait, but there's insulated hip boots. Oh, now you tell me.
Yeah.
So anyway, equipment is important. And it's really great now that there's companies that target the female audience now.
For sure. And my wife's not a big fan of pulling the trigger, but she loves being out there.
I didn't start out being a fan of pulling the trigger, but the more I learned about wildlife management and the more I learned what we were doing out there, the less I became more of a fan of it.
Sure.
Matter of fact, if we come up, I run a coyote line at home, and we come up on a coyote even in Louisiana, I'm the one that pulls the trigger.
There you go. There you go.
So would it be fair to say that kids aren't like don't seem to be getting into trapping like they maybe did when y'all were coming along? It doesn't seem like it's something that I hear kids talking about. Am I right about that? Or is that,
Oh, yeah. You're seeing the same problem in all the outdoor sports, I think. There's so much other demands on kids' time now. And also, when I grew up trapping muskrats back in the 60s and 70s, I mean, that was a significant income then. I bought my first car from muskrat money. And now the prices are down on most furs. And it's there's no local fur buyers out there to help someone with, taking in an animal and selling it on a carcass. They almost all have to be skinned now prior to, and that's another dimension that younger kids have trouble with, especially if they don't have a mentor.
Yeah.
So it's more difficult to get started now. So a lot of our state trapping associations have active programs and trying to recruit younger members. They have trapper workshops. So there are educational opportunities out there for youngsters wanting to get started, but it's more difficult than it used to be.
So do the furs, does that kind of cycle and go down and come back up? And
It does. It goes in cycles. Anybody that's been in the business as long as my dad has, they've seen it go in these cycles. I mean, it can go from a really high peak to just absolutely worthless. And what we're seeing right now, I mean, there are certain species that are bringing decent prices, but the main ones like the raccoon, the coyote market, those are pretty tough right now. I've seen it both ways.
what do they use the raccoons for?
Well, one of the big
Hats.
markets for raccoon was coats in Russia. That market disappeared. So
Is it
big
because they're growing their own fur and not collecting it from the wild, or is it just
No.
trends have changed? Or
Well, in Russia, what they were doing was they were harvesting sable, very high dollar fur. So they would sell that on the international market. And then with the money from that, they would buy the cheaper raccoons. So they ended up with the same amount of fur plus rubles.
okay,
So
interesting.
it was a good trade-off for them. And a fur coat in Russia is a standard item. I mean, it's cold in Siberia.
Well, I mean, fur is really warm, and
Yeah.
It's very
just
warm.
it's surprising to me. We times have changed, people's mindsets have changed, but we use petroleum products to make synthetic fibers like polyester and things like that. But we have all of these natural materials available to us that God gave us to make coats and things out of. And I hope that tradition continues.
Oh, it will with some. It like Bill was saying, it cycles. Another example, why don't you tell them about cowboy hats?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Beaver right now is a hot item,
Okay.
all because of the show Yellowstone. Because the beaver hair is taken off, and that's used in the felt that's made the high-end cowboy hats. So a lot of people are buying these high-end cowboy hats, have no idea that fur is involved.
How about
Yep,
that?
that's so true. Yep.
And but they should know, I think, right?
Well, but okay, but where are they going to get that information? Okay, if they're listening to a podcast like this, they're probably already kind of in the know.
Sure.
If you're waiting on mainstream media to tell them, they're not going to tell them. They don't want to know.
Right. I think there's just a lot of the word ignorant can be a little judgy sounding, but I think there's just a lot of folks that don't know that they want to buy the fake fur jacket, but they're probably also anti drilling in oil and such. But they're buying a fake fur jacket that's made out of oil.
You're basically saying you're exposing the hypocrisy in that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
I
exactly
didn't know
what it
if we
is.
wanted to go that direction with this podcast or not, but I kind of wanted to bring some of that.
No,
Yeah, and a
that's
lot
fine,
of them
but
live in
that's-
California, too.
So yeah, well, I mean it's fine to point that out, and I think there's probably some of the same with the same people that are buying some of those cowboy hats probably aren't necessarily big hunters either, and they don't realize that they don't realize what's going on there. But
well, now the true cowboy hat connoisseur, they know, because there's indications in the band of the cowboy hat indicating what percentage of beaver fur is used in that construction. Yeah. So the higher the number X's in there, the more beaver, and the higher the cost.
But it's a great material. It probably stays warm when wet.
It's waterproof,
and it probably doesn't hold scents. It probably like you wear polyester long underwear, you start stinking really quick. But you wear something like wool made out of a natural material, or probably beaver fur is probably similar to that.
The big advantage of the beaver fur is that the hairs are like serrated on the edges, so they kind of interlock. That helps keep the beaver dry when it's swimming underwater. That also lets that fur mat together in a more solid felt, so it creates a almost waterproof hat that way too.
Interesting stuff. But we've been talking about how the market isn't the greatest for most species, but a lot of our listeners are not necessarily trapping to try to make income. They're improving the ecosystem for turkey poults and little baby quail and ground nesting birds and things. So that's been kind of the gateway drug for our trappers that kind of run with our genre is trapping nest predators is where a lot of them get started, and then they realize how fun it is, and it's a lot different than sitting in a deer stand. It's kind of like you're out there squirrel hunting or something. You're going from spot to spot.
You're active.
You may be going with a friend, so you can have a conversation. Mm-hmm. You're covering a lot of ground. That's kind of, my ADHD self is not good at sitting around.
I never was either. That's why trapping appealed to me. And not only that, you're looking at 20-some different fur bearer species in North America, and look at all the different habitat zones we have. And then, as Bill brought forward here, some of the different types of traps that we can use. Tremendous number of variables. So there's always a different challenge.
Moultrie was first in feeders since 1979 and is the leader in total game management. They're taking feeding to another level with the new Ranch Series line of durable and versatile feeders, perfect for both wildlife and domestic livestock. So Dudley, you can feed your goats. Whether you're a deer hunter, a hobby farmer, a land manager, or a rancher, Moultrie has you covered with several kit options, including a rotating auger, broadcast, or a gravity kit. And these feeders are 300 or 450 pounds. They're big feeders. All right, so guys, Moultrie is offering our listeners a 15% site-wide discount at moultriefeeders.com. Use code Mossy Oak with a capital M, Mossy Oak, at moultriefeeders.com and get that 15% discount. So you got into trapping to make money.
Yeah, as an 11-year-old boy, I wanted money. I was a mercenary.
Do you through all these years of trapping and looking at your beard, you've been doing this a long time. And I mean that with affection.
Thank you. I take it that way.
Have you seen where you've been able to help a property or transform a property by pulling these predators off?
Absolutely, and it's becoming more of that all the time. When I started, it was about fur trapping. Most of the trappers I know started out as fur trappers. Now today, like you've indicated, there's other reasons for trapping, and mostly it's wildlife management. Whether it's trying to help other species, or whether it's trying to help farmers with a problem that they have, or even a homeowner. Maybe they've got raccoons in their attic. Some of my fur trapper friends have started their year-round animal damage control businesses, doing trapping year-round like that. I'm still a fur trapper at heart, but I enjoy helping out the farmers too, and that's what we're doing down in Louisiana right now.
Yeah, we're working on crawfish farms down there because otter, mink, and raccoons cause their biggest damage problems. And it's not so much that the otter come in and eat the crawfish that are in the crawfish traps, but they turn them over. They flip them. They play. So what's orderly been set up by by boat. So you've got boat expense, you've got fuel expense, you've got the hired person that puts it out, plus the bait fish that go in. All of those expenses are wreaked havoc when a group of otter come through. Farmers down there tell us that they can lose somewhere between $1,000 and $4,000 a night when a group of otter come through the crawfish fields.
Mac, why don't you Google the river otter population here in the States? I was reading about them the other day, and I think their numbers are incredibly high right now. I could be mistaken.
Is it because people don't trap much anymore?
Well, for the fur value, not as much. Again, for wildlife management, that's where a majority of the trapping is, especially with the southern furs, because they're not as good a quality, so they're worth proportionally less. So a lot of animal damage control trapping done in the South. And some trappers receive a bounty, so much per head for each animal that they remove from the farmers' fields. Some places, government entities will pay for beaver removal if they're drowning out roadways and flooding timber, that sort of thing. So, yeah, and otter numbers specifically, otter were reintroduced throughout most of their original habitat throughout North America, 20
I was going to say in Ohio it was around
ago.
86.
So, yeah, the numbers have been increasing in those areas ever since. And there's a lot of them in the South. I think we're seeing more otter here than we did when we started.
I think so too.
Back, yeah.
And look, don't
15
they
years
get into a pond and just kill the fish? They not necessarily eat all of them. They just kill them.
Yep.
They'll eat them.
Yep.
They can eat 25% of their body weight a night. That's a tremendous amount of body, for a small animal like that.
But you see where they are in Louisiana, that's some of the most concentrated population of otter in the country. Louisiana has more otter than any place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mississippi's got a good population, but Louisiana's really big. I mean, when we were buying big numbers of otter, we thought 500 otter was a big number. They'll 5,000 otter down there. It's that much more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good habitat.
Yeah, when we decided to trap otter, we researched and said, we're going to Louisiana. Yeah, that's one thing about being a fur trapper. You got to go where they are.
Do you think there's more raccoons today than there was, say, 25 years ago?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Isn't that
Yeah,
amazing?
they would be the ones to ask for sure.
Yeah.
We've had that question in our mind, because let's face it, so many people feed when they're deer hunting these days, and we're like, certainly we're helping the raccoons too.
Without a doubt. The corn piles, we have all the Louisiana deer hunters that we've talked to come and kill our raccoons. Like, I hate feeding the raccoons, but the corn pile's there. You put out the buffet, they're going to come.
For sure.
And I don't think that's the only reason that they've increased, but it certainly helps.
Yeah, and I don't think people coon hunt like they used to. It still goes on. I know it, and it's a great sport. I'm a fan of it, but I don't think it's as big a deal as it used to be. Mac, have you heard any of your friends talk about coon hunting?
Not as much. So I did find that there's over 100,000 river otters in the United States, and in the late 2000s, they translocated 4,000 river otters to 23 states.
Interesting.
I think that river otter's what Lanny saw, and he thinks he saw a black
You're
a
only
panther.
saying that because he's not here.
we got another guy that sits where Bill is.
I feel honored, really.
That he doesn't think he saw a black. He thinks he saw a jaguarundi, which is a kind of a dark cougar, like in the swamps of South Alabama, and I think he saw an otter.
They call it an otter cat. I mean,
Have
that's
you-
like a common name for jaguarundi.
So you've been trapping all over. Have you ever encountered east of the Mississippi River a mountain lion?
No, not physically. Now, I will say a friend and I in Southeast Ohio one time, back in our college days, we grouse hunting. Of course, you're back in the hills as far as you can go from civilization. We found an old cabin. And on the wall of this old cabin, I mean, the roof's fallen down. It's been abandoned for years and years. You can tell the outline of a hide that had been stretched up on the wall. and that hide was about 5 foot long, and it had a long tail. That's all I know about it.
I wonder where it came
But
from.
that you try to figure out any other animal that would fit that description. I can't.
No.
But I think there was a hide nailed up on a cabin down in southeast Ohio, probably back in the 50s, maybe 40s. I don't know. But as far as our experience, everyone that we have heard of and have followed through with was most likely an escaped captive.
Yeah.
So they have been seen.
So he loves to ask that
Yeah,
question.
I'm sorry. We'll get back on track.
And I've not seen any aliens either.
Well, that's good. That's good. I wasn't going to ask you that one, but I'm glad to know that.
Well,
Anyway.
And you were talking earlier about people getting into trapping to save turkey poults and that kind of stuff. For the last 2 years, Dave and I have we've worked the NWTF convention, the National Trappers booth at that convention in Nashville. And all we had out there were our displays of hides and some traps and, making eye contact with people. The outfitters next to us finally said after day 2, "You're the busiest booth in this entire row, and you're not even selling anything."
That's a good point.
But we're selling the wildlife management. But it was amazing at how many people either want to know more about how to trap because of saving populations, because of wildlife management, or how many people stop to say, "How can I do this better? I've tried this. What do I need to know?" So a huge amount of interest that we've seen at those conventions the last 2 years.
From younger people.
Yes. Oh,
That's encouragement too.
Well,
some wanted to just share their stories about what they caught.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I think the whole Save the Poult movement and all that has got a lot of people. It would, like Dudley used a great analogy. It's a gateway opportunity, and guys realize just how much of a strategy and how fun this is, because I've been kind of playing around with them a little bit, and I've met a guy over in Alabama that's a really good coyote trapper, and he trapped 9 last year. I was just absolutely amazed. But so listening to these stories, and people realize, there's the fun in doing it. I think it. What's the word when something is you just.
You're passionate?
I don't know. It's contagious almost.
Yeah, it can
okay.
be contagious. I mean, people start out with something simple like a DP trap, and they're successful with it, and then they get into trapping coyotes, and pretty soon they've got a lot of that predator pressure knocked down. And I'm really happy when I hear stories like that, because you'll find one landowner, they'll tell their neighbor landowner, "Let's start doing this." And when they work as a team, the difference between them having turkeys and other people having turkeys, they're most likely going to have turkeys because they're taking that and making it work.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Yeah, it is. Oh, yeah.
Nosler's known for their bullets, and now they're making suppressors. Nosler suppressors are made for hunting. Adding a Nosler suppressor to your rifle will make you a quieter, more accurate, and more effective hunter. Protect your hearing and disturb less game with a Nosler suppressor. The time to hunt quiet is now. Learn more at nosler.com.
I mean, let's just start with like this Duke, the dog proof. What are some of your tips and tricks and that you could maybe explain to a guy that could help him be even more successful with that? That one's very simple in my mind.
That has revolutionized raccoon trapping. I mean, I can remember many years we never had those. Those are a fairly new invention, new development in trapping, and they've changed things because it's made it much easier to catch those raccoons. For southern trapping, you're limited, I think, sometimes on bait because of fire ants. So you want to put something in there that the fire ants won't get in, and that usually is shelled corn. And a lot of times the coon are used to shelled corn because they've been up there at that deer feeder. They know what that stuff is. So I use shelled corn almost exclusively here in the South. Anchor the traps down securely. You may not think that raccoon has that much power, but make sure you've got a good stake down in the ground to hold that trap. And I like to put mine out in an open area so that they don't have anything to entangle themselves with and try to pull out. So kind of an open area, well staked in the ground. And if you see the coon trail, when they first came out, I had some of my trapper friends say, "Oh, yeah, you just set that right beside the trail." No, set it in the trail. Make them run over it. Be obvious.
They're
Yeah, they don't veer out of it that well.
Mac, are you seeing raccoon trails?
No, that was going to be my question. Is what I mean? Are like the prints, or I mean, a disturbance?
I see deer
in the
trails.
leaves?
You probably have to look more closely, but like where they come under a fence or something like that.
Okay.
If you've got a place where they're visiting regularly, they live somewhere else, there's going to be a trail in between those two areas. A lot of times in the grass, you'll just see this narrow trail, just 3 inches wide maybe, and that's an animal the size of raccoon or smaller. We call two different kinds of trails where we trap the single wides or the double wides. Now, the double wides would be a beaver, a nutria, an otter. Their feet are out on the sides, like a wider trail. So we come up and we see a double wide. Oh, maybe an otter here, Look for the sign, look for the scat. Single wide, okay, here's a coon trail.
Mink, maybe.
Yeah.
That's a great example, though, of how somebody, a trapper, is paying more attention to the woods.
Yes.
And is aware of more that's going on.
In my little bit of experience, I've done a lot of trying to catch raccoons and possums and things like that. But you can really narrow down, like some people, and it may not necessarily be the right thing to do, but you can put out a trap and catch a lot of things. But you normally try to target like a species or some closely related species. To try to, you don't want to catch like a non-target. So you try to put it in their habitat, their haunts. If you're trying to catch raccoon, you're probably going to be near a little creek or maybe near a feeder or something like that.
Yeah, and that DP, that's a good example of a species-specific trap. And as Bill can tell you, they make all kinds of different traps for different situations, different animals, and they can be targeted with pan pressure and other things, can't they, Bill?
Absolutely. Pan pressure is a key thing. If you're trapping an animal like on land, you want to exclude non-targets. You just want to catch the coyotes, well, you crank up the pan pressure a little bit on it. So if a non-target raccoon steps on it, you're not going to catch that animal.
I believe you can actually get a scale type device that you can push down on the pan of a foothold trap, and we probably need to get into what is a foothold trap for listeners that don't know. But yeah, so it may need a certain amount of pounds of pressure, and so a raccoon is not very heavy.
Right.
Well, some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them are.
Got some big ones.
We've caught some 20-plus pounders over the years.
So you like shelled corn? Or is anything
For
else?
me.
Or
Now, if I'm in Ohio, yeah.
Yeah. Well, coon likes sweet things. I just had a trapper in Delaware that told me what he does is go to the dollar store and buy candy, and he throws candy in the traps. Some for him, some for the traps. I had another guy that at the NWTF convention, he told me this works great. Now, I haven't tried it, but he said he takes the chocolate syrup and he squirts it in the bottom of the trap, moves on to the next one, squirts chocolate syrup, brings them in. You can't do that kind of stuff with fire ants. I will say, like right now, I've got a DP trap that I have baited with shell corn 4 days in a row, and nothing has set it off. That tells me that's not a coon coming in there. I've got mice or some kind of rodents that are getting down in that trap, eating the corn, and getting free meals. So one of the things that I do when I have that situation, I cover it with aluminum foil. Shiny side out, because coon like shiny, they'll come and investigate. So that's another way you can draw them to your trap. There have been some people who like the colored golf balls to put on top of their DP trap as an attractant. Or some people who have painted them like purple and pink and other colors so that the coon actually see them and go investigate. So there's a couple other things.
I guess that could keep a mouse or something from getting in there.
Yeah, the golf ball or the aluminum foil, either one of those will keep something else from getting in there. The coon will knock it off or tear it off and then get in there to get the corn.
What about like dry cat food? Will fire ants get into that?
Yes.
Okay.
We use dry cat food at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, those dang fire ants.
I know. We've tried all kinds of things because coon, we don't want the fire ants. They don't want them either.
If it's cold enough and the ants aren't that active, you can use it for a while.
Sure.
But if it warms up, you better check that trap and get rid of anything that the fire ants would want and go back to corn.
So when you set a trap, ethically as a trapper, you've got to go back the next day.
Yes.
It varies from state to state and conditions that you trap under. Most normal trapping is 24-hour check, yes. Now, some states will have a 72-hour check if you have lethal sets underwater. Like if you have the large body grippers for beaver, Some areas you don't have to go back for 72 hours because the animal's going to be dead.
You have to put your names on traps in some states.
Oh, yeah.
Most states.
There's another option. You can go with your hunter ID number in some states, too. That way, if an unethical person would find your trap, they don't have your contact information. But if a wildlife officer comes up there, they see the number, they can immediately call it up and know who you are.
Okay. So some crazy nut job can't find you on Facebook and then come to your front door.
Or take the tag off of your trap and then call the wildlife officer and say, hey, I found so-and-so's trap. It doesn't have a name tag on it. How do you know it's so-and-so's trap? Things like that have happened in the past. So, but yes, they have to be identified one way or another.
Is it that way here in Mississippi?
Yeah, you're supposed to have a trap tag on every trap you set.
Learn something.
Mississippi is actually a pretty lenient state for trapping. I mean, you can do a lot of things in Mississippi that you can't do in other states. So I do think that we're real fortunate that we've got more options.
I think if you are nuisance trapping, it's not necessary. Y'all look at the regulations.
Yeah.
But if you're like a professional trapper that's selling furs and that kind of thing, I do think in Mississippi you have to have
What we strongly recommend is anybody check your state regulations because they all vary. So make sure you abide by your state regulations.
They vary a lot.
They do. I mean, every state is going to have some differences. Some are more lenient, but you just don't know until you get down and look at every single thing in that regulation.
Yeah, just like in Mississippi, you wouldn't have to worry about the ponds freezing over for extended periods of time and need that 72-hour check to go cut that hole in the ice again.
Yeah, we did last week.
Yeah, for a little while, but nothing like mostly northern states have that kind of regulation in place. Yeah. Or some of the western states on the coyote lines where they're traveling hundreds of miles, a trapper will in one day to run coyote traps. They have some 72-hour check laws as well.
So are you seeing more coyotes now than you did as a young man when you were?
I didn't see any when I was a young man. I mean, they came into Ohio back in the, 80s, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, to catch my first coyote, I couldn't wait for them to come to Ohio, so I went to Missouri and caught one. But yeah, they've been expanding ever since. They're probably now about the maximum amount of expansion there's some places I think in the east of the Appalachians that still have more red fox than they have coyotes, but I'm afraid that'll change. Coyotes are moving in more all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I see that around here too. If a red fox is going to survive here, they've got to be in town or be able to have a habitat under a building because the coyotes will just kill them straight away. But I remember the days back in the 70s and 80s, we used to handle lots of red foxes and hardly no coyotes, and now it's completely opposite.
Well, and on the other end of that, the muskrat. That was the fur back when I was a kid to trap. There were muskrats everywhere. Now you have very, very few muskrats in some areas. Some of your marshlands still have good populations, but if it's managed for ducks, it won't have muskrats. Muskrats require more static water level. So if a marsh or a pond is lowered to allow vegetation to grow for emergent vegetation for the ducks, that disrupts the muskrats in those areas. Now, if it's managed for muskrats, they're still there.
What about nutria rat? Do they displace the muskrat?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and we displaced the nutria rats.
We do our best.
Rob and I were driving to Stuttgart, Arkansas the other day, and this nutria rat, we were at this crossroads, four-way stop out in the middle of nowhere, and he just slowly crossed the road, like right in front of us. Funny looking. Didn't seem to care that we were there, did it?
It made it across the road?
Well,
that's what I was thinking.
We made an attempt. We did make an attempt, but...
when we're running the trap line there in Louisiana, we always carry a .22 rifle on the bike, and if we see one swimming, I'd say 9 out of 10 of them don't swim that far.
Well, they're an invasive species. They're
They
not
are.
supposed to be here.
Yeah.
So
what's your favorite thing to trap?
I'm looking at him because when we first started dating, he was a muskrat trapper. And then as coon became plentiful, he was a raccoon trapper.
Yeah, 400 or 500 a year.
And then...
Raccoons?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Louisiana thing was otter. So I didn't get to go with him full time for the first few years he was down there. But every time I was down there, he'd be like, "Ooh, see that coon trail? See that coon trail? See that coon trail?" I'm like, "We're here for otter.
You know where his
They're
heart
here
is.
for otter." We had this discussion just the other day that
Again.
he's an otter trapper now. I turned him into an otter trapper.
And mink.
I'm amazed that you enjoy the raccoons. I mean, that would be one of your.
He did.
Well, we had so many in Ohio. We're corn farmers too.
Yeah.
And raccoons are a tremendous nuisance around the cornfields, of course.
So walk me through a scenario. So you've got say 3 or 4 of these DPs, the Duke dog-proof traps out. You got shelled corn in it. You walk up and there's 2 coons and two traps are triggered. What goes on? You get off your bike and what do you do then?
Oh wow! Get the rifle out. 22 brown nose, no hollow points. Hollow points do too much damage. It makes it kind of messy when you're skinning. So just a regular 22 long rifle, and we do dispatch. Usually with the raccoon, try to get right below the ear, maybe between the eyes. Usually it's pretty quick. So yeah, that's the first thing we do, and then with the 2 of us there, I usually start getting the animals out of the trap and making a reset. She'll take care of putting the raccoons back in the bike and
any other equipment we need.
Yeah,
I rebait.
Yeah. So if there's blood on the trap right there, you just rebait that one and set it again.
For raccoon, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if we were seriously coyote trapping, I would probably be a little cleaner about the remake sets that I'd put out. But the raccoon, it's not that big of an issue there.
Yeah. When you're trying to catch coyotes or fox or bobcat, you got to cover the trap to where you can't see it and all of that stuff. With raccoon, I don't think you have to be very particular at all. They don't.
Well, you're setting that DP. It's obviously
A piece of metal.
Yeah. And cats are not as particular about that as coyotes are.
Interesting.
Yeah, they'll step on a bear trap sometimes. So you don't have to be as scent free or as careful when trapping bobcats.
And there's some interesting regulations about bobcats. I know in some states, I know like you could hang like an attractant, like a feather spinning in the wind right above the trap. In some states, you can't do that.
We call that flagging.
Flagging.
Uh-huh. And some states, you can't use you can't use any other animal parts.
Okay.
But you can use maybe a CD disc.
Yeah, I remember somebody saying like a piece of cassette tape hanging down.
Yeah.
It shines. I mean, my cat would want to play with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Whatever your cat's interested in, that cat's definitely going to be interested in it.
But there's so much to trapping. And so where can somebody go to just learn as much as they can? I mean, I know there's a lot of resources, but what are some good resources? I used to go to a forum. I think it was called the Trapper Man Forum, and I would
It still exists.
I would read it and read it and read it.
And yeah, there's some good stuff on there. It got a little political too at times.
Mm-hmm.
I think for just basic trapping information, go to a trapper's workshop or a trapper's meeting, and most states have them. Check out online what's the nearest one available in your area, and look that up.
There are a number of trappers who are running schools now targeted like just for coyote,
Okay.
something like that. The other thing is there's a lot of women's workshops that are happening now.
Great.
Kelly, Mackenzie.
Yeah. I mean, I know of one happening in Tennessee. I think it might have been this past weekend. But here in late January, there was one happening in Tennessee, led by women, for women. There's another one that I saw on Facebook by the same group of people are doing it in Indiana. They've been doing it in Wisconsin. Pennsylvania had a crew. So there are a number of superstar women out there right now. Sarah Gomez, Linda White, Lydia Rickenbacker, Megan Lockwood are some of the names that you're going to see a lot more of in the next few years.
Excellent. And by doing that and hanging out with actual humans, you can have a mentor.
Yes.
So important.
And then, it's just like going camping. You get to know these people and hang out and make new friends with similar interests, and you can
I think
feed off of each other.
if you have that base first, then what you see on YouTube videos or forums or whatever are like the reminder or the connection or taking it to the next step.
Yeah, good point. Excellent point.
The Ferminator is the industry's most versatile piece of food plot equipment, allowing plotters to do every step of the process, working the soil, adding seed and soil supplements, and compacting, from start to finish with a single implement. It's hassle-free by design. Set it for the seed size and simply drive the tractor, and the Ferminator does the rest. Check it out at theferminator.com.
Hey guys, Dudley from Gamekeepers here. I want to tell you about the all-new Gunner Dog Bowl. It's designed for home and built for travel. It's customizable, leak-resistant, light on weight, solid on durability, and rust-proof. Like other Gunner products, they're made in Nashville and designed for everywhere.
Mac, you got a question or a comment?
I do. This is, it's definitely going to be a it depends answer, but just for folks, say, okay, for us in the South, deer season's almost over with. Everybody's starting to shift towards turkeys. February, it's too cold to fish, so trapping is, I would say, at least out of my friends, February's a month where that's what a lot of people in the South are focusing on, trapping for nest predators. How many traps would you say? I know it depends on your populations, but if somebody's getting started, what is an attainable amount of traps to check and to put out and to rebait in a period? So if you had 100 acres, how many traps would you think you would need for raccoons, nest predators specific?
For 100 acres, a dozen would be plenty, I would think.
And how many would you expect to catch?
Depends on the habitat.
Yeah, it really does.
Now, we have a 150-acre farm back home, and one year I think we caught 30 raccoons on our farm. That's a pretty high population. And she's caught as many as, 7 coyotes?
At one
Now,
time.
How fast do they come back?
That's what I was getting ready to say. Not all of those lived on our farm. They lived on some of the neighbors, but we caught them coming across the fence, basically. So if you're going to be effective in managing wildlife, you need to do it on a large enough basis. That's one thing that's important. You can't just take the animals off of your farm because they'll come from the neighbor's farm. But if you can kick yours and the neighbors, maybe the next neighbors, get a big enough area, that will help. The other way to make sure that you're having an impact is, again, and this timing works out really well with deer and turkey hunters, get those animals late winter, early spring, especially the breeding females. So important on coyotes. If you want to control the coyote population, you take out that breeding, that alpha female in March or February. Now, no other female has a chance to step up and become alpha and get bred in that short time frame. So you've taken care of the reproduction for that area with that one female. So targeting the specific animals and also targeting a large enough area. So yeah, for a 100-acre farm, maybe a dozen traps. When we head south, we bring about 400.
We do.
Well, you guys have gotten so efficient,
too.
you know.
Makes Duke happy because almost all of them say Duke on them.
Well, you know, again, a lot of people run feeders, and
Yep.
you know, they may have 4 feeders on 100 acres, and I know that you could probably, you know, preset some stakes, like cable stakes or regular stakes. Maybe even put 4 in the vicinity of each feeder, and you know, make your work more efficient. I mean, you may be able to fill all 4 of those up in one night. Am I right?
Oh, it's possible, yeah. Yeah, if they're used to coming in there and you're giving them the food.
I mean, we see trail camera photos all the time, you know, ours, our listeners. Gosh, I've seen some deer feeder pictures that have like 12 or 13 raccoons.
I've
in
seen
each
those
photo.
pictures.
You know, you may have 4 of them climbing on the top and hanging on the posts, and
They're not a Moultrie
4 on the ground.
XT feeder.
That's
though,
a
'cause
good
they've
point.
got that electronic, they can shock them, keep them off. And, but anyway, I wanted to ask, Mac, you got another question, so hang on just 1 second before, I'm going to forget this if I don't. But when you walk up there and you dispatch the coon, do you have something in your mind that you're looking for to make sure if he isn't flopping, does that make you worry and you need to shoot him again? Or have you ever picked up one out of the trap and he come back to life a little bit on you? I'm just trying to get a little advice
We
here.
both evaluate when I shoot one or she shoots one. Yeah, that's a good shot.
shoot it again.
Shoot it again just to make sure.
Security shot.
Double tap.
Yeah. Yeah, they'd be a handful if it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you ever have? I'm hoping I can ask this question, but does anything ever get after the coon that's in the trap? Because I've often wondered that, and they doesn't say. I've had like a picture of some coyotes come through when I knew I had a raccoon in the trap that night, and they didn't mess with him.
We've had some animals that the smaller animals.
So as a coyote
But not
and a
the coon.
raccoon, they don't.
A big raccoon can hold its own.
And a lot of things don't like to eat raccoons.
Yeah, raccoon. I know a lot of coon hunters would try to feed their coon dogs raccoon meat, and unless they cooked it, the dogs didn't want to eat it.
Mac, what you got? Is it better than that?
I don't know. So if you're successful at a trap set, are you keeping that trap there, or do you think that you need to move it? And are there historical places on a property that it's consistent and successful, and you just keep catching them?
We have been on one farm in Mississippi. It's a 6,000 acre farm.
Louisiana.
You've been, huh? Oh, I said Mississippi. I'm sorry, Louisiana. One crawfish farm that we've been going to. Are you 18 years?
Yeah.
About 18 years now. He's been going down there, and I've been going with him. When we go to that farm, I can point to you on a map of that farm pretty much where we're going to make sets. Now, they may vary, a few feet this direction or the other direction, but we know where they're going.
Yeah, we transfer trails, crossover trails. There's certain locations. Now, as far as remaking a set after you've caught an animal, it can be better or it can be worse. Depends on the animal and the way the set was made. A lot of the guys trapping coyotes will not reset within that catch circle where that first coyote was caught because others tend to shy away from that circle. So they'll add a second set just outside that circle. That's where the coyote's going to be. So for coyote trapping, sometimes you need to make another set. They won't come right into the same one. Now, a mink, once that set area smells like mink, especially if it's a female mink this time of year, every male that comes by, you're going to get. So that it becomes more of a lure. Now, I say that about coyotes. Strangely enough, if another animal has been caught in that trap other than a coyote, that attracts the coyote to come into that location. So we catch a lot of them accidentally the second night after we've caught something.
That's interesting.
And cats too. I love catching a skunk because now
I don't.
that's going to attract a bobcat the next time. The smell.
Very interesting.
You're talking about the raccoon meat, but I know that Super Bowl weekend, there's a lot of raccoons get eaten.
We sell a bunch of them, but they're cooked.
They're cooked. Cooked raccoon meat is good. But, you're talking a coyote coming by. That's not cooked.
But
my pets will not eat feral pig when it's raw, but when it's cooked, they gobble it up.
Mm-hmm.
There's something instinctive. They know that those animals, being omnivores, could carry, parasites. That's my thought.
That's your theory. That's a good theory.
Bill Duke,
Yes, sir.
royalty in the trapping world. What
Get
does
outta
a
here.
raccoon taste like?
What does a raccoon taste like? I had a brief taste the last time you guys decided to have the crock pot coon. This was about this time last year. Yeah. If the smell is kind of special. You know what I mean?
It was, to me, it was kind of mild but stringy, and the texture wasn't really my thing, but the flavor, it just kind of tasted like barbecue sauce.
Yeah, I felt like it tasted like that too. But the thing that knocked you back is the smell of it cooking.
Yeah,
I mean, Sam did a fantastic job doing it, but you got to get that. You got to get past that.
I think it's an acquired taste.
Must be.
Well, you're going to have some variation there too, just like you do in venison. Okay, if you got that old buck deer in the middle of the rut, not going to taste near as good as that young doe.
If I open up your freezer, have you got raccoons in it?
Yes.
Back in the trailer right now, camp. Yeah.
And at home, and muskrat, and beaver.
Yeah.
Now, I have heard beaver meat is similar to whitetail. Am I close? It's supposedly good.
Oh, it's good.
It's good.
It's
Yeah,
good.
I wouldn't compare the two, but
Okay.
I've never. Now I like muskrat too, and muskrat's a darker red meat like that.
I've heard the rodents are good. I like eating squirrel.
I like nutria. I mean, we cook it when we're down here when we get a good one.
How do you cook the nutria?
He cleans it.
Okay.
My simplest method when I was down here by myself,
Hams.
Huh?
Cut the hams out
Yeah, cut the ham out, put it in a crock pot with a link of sausage and an onion.
and an onion.
Okay.
That sounds very Cajun.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
it's delicious. Oh, you got to have some slap your mama on there too.
Oh yeah, we have a can of that in
yeah,
the kitchen.
Yeah. You know, when our daughter was a year old, our oldest daughter, and I took her in for her year checkup, it happened to be the end of November. And the doctor said, is she eating solid food now? And I'm like, sure. He goes, well, like, what did she have? What did she feed her this week? Let's see. She had an elk. She had venison. She had muskrat stew. She had black bear. And he was like, stop. If she's eating all that, she's fine.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, so you reset the traps, and do you keep them active? How do you what it determines? Okay, I've got them all out of here. Is it 2 or 3 nights when you're not catching anything, or
It's
is
going to
it more
depend.
to it than that?
With an otter.
So
otter. Oh, okay.
Oh, coon.
Okay. Raccoons, usually about a week in an
Yeah.
area.
I used to run a canoe trap line in Ohio, and I would figure 7 to 10 days, I would have most of the raccoons out of that immediate area. Now, the way raccoons are, you could go back 3 weeks later and more would have moved back in. But in about 7 to 10 days, I could usually have a pretty good control on that population. Now, I used it. I don't rely on just one trap or one set. I mean, these DPs are great traps, but if you can read the sign and watch the tracks in the mud, you'll see places where raccoon will walk right past that baited trap and not even slow down. So what do I do there? Well, if I know there's a trail, that 1.5 coil spring right there up on the bench, that's a really good tool to set down in that trail, recessed, covered with some grass. Now that raccoon doesn't know what it's going to step in. It doesn't know to go around it. So don't rely on just one set. I think that's another key point to make when you're targeting something.
What happens if one of the white-tailed deer that I love so much is walking through there and steps on that?
I'll answer that. Can I?
It will set the trap off and jump up in the air and run away.
I mean, it has a big hoof, and it doesn't get bigger at the bottom, so they can just pull right out.
They
of
pull
it.
out,
I mean,
and-
those coil spring traps are there to hold them, but it doesn't really damage anything.
The other way you can avoid that on a trail like that is to take a stick, maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches in diameter, about 4 or 5 feet long, and set down at an angle over top of the trap. That way the raccoon's going to walk underneath there, or the other targeted animal. The deer probably going to
Step
jump
over
over or go around.
Now, see, that's the kind of stuff that I like to hear. That these little tips and tricks that these trappers know, and you kind of got to pull it out of them.
Well, there's so many of them. We don't even think about that stuff.
What about the live traps? Do y'all utilize those as well?
Sometimes it depends on the situation. If a farmer has trouble with, say, raccoons in their barn and they've got cats too, and they like the cats, we're going to go with a live trap so we can release them.
Yeah.
I can see where they're bulkier, they take up more space.
Oh,
if you're on a 4-wheeler or something. But I use them in town.
Yeah.
I've got I don't have chickens anymore, but when I had chickens, I'd catch 2 or 3 raccoons a week in live traps.
So we use them. It's another tool, but it's hard to beat that foothold trap.
I love
It's been around for hundreds of years, and it's very effective. We made a lot of improvements on it. They make a great product today that does the job.
I love my Duke. Is it 1.5 or 1.5 coil springs?
We call them
Yes.
1.5.
1.5.
What do you call them?
I call them 1.5s, but depending on where you are in the country, they call them different things. Down in Louisiana, they call them oyster traps.
Okay.
You've heard of that before or not? Because
No.
because they're shaped kind of like
Like
an
an
oyster.
oyster,
Yeah.
yeah.
They call them oyster traps. 1.5 oyster traps, and then over in Arkansas, they call them 1.5s.
1.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like the convenience of a coil spring. I do have some dog proofs as well, but I've modded them out, which is really fun. Riley that used to work here, we'd dime and wax them, and we'd night latch them, and we'd add another swivel. And one thing I like to do is add a little length of cable to where you can use it like a loop and put it around the base of a sapling or something to secure it. And then we also have those cable stakes, which is just a piece of cable, and it's got a little hunk of metal that you drive into the ground, and then you pull it tight, and it works as a stake. and then you attach your trap to that. And then the other method is an actual rebar stake that's made out of rebar, and they work great as well. I think with raccoon you probably use one, but a larger animal you crisscross them.
Yeah, you double stake them. Yep.
But there's so much to learn, and there's so many different species, and it's just a lot of fun.
Well, you were asking about learning those little tips and trades. Almost every state has a trapping association, and the National Trapping Association, and then there's Fur Takers of America, and they have national conventions. And at those national conventions, we call them demos, but they're educational seminars. 3 or 4 days worth of educational seminars. And that's where you can go and listen to people talk about these things and ask questions. So even beyond classes, there are those kind of things. Like our Ohio State Trappers, we have our state convention, but we also have 3 regional conventions twice a year, one in the spring and one in the fall, and have the same kind of things. It's one day, but an afternoon of people sharing.
That's interesting. So if I Dudley made a comment a minute ago about the waxing. So if I buy a dozen Duke traps, get them in a box, delivered to the house, the dog proofs, when they come out, do I need to boil them or wax them or anything, or can I just take off and? Because that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, you're doing the right thing. You just take off and start setting them.
Well,
you don't have to do anything to those because they come with a powder coated finish, and you bait it, set that trap, stake it down, and just wait for the coons to come by. Where you want to do some treating on the traps is going to be on the plain steel traps. When they become rusted, you may want to pull those, or you may want to spray paint them black or brown, whatever.
People
suits.
just have different ways of doing things.
That's right.
It's almost like you're getting your turkey vest ready. That's what trappers do. They get their traps ready for the season.
So they boil them and then they wax them.
Some people will boil them with walnuts, and it'll help them turn black, which is an earthy tone. Some people will paint them. I think the wax just, they're getting rusty. And
that lubricates the surfaces so they function very quickly. You wax those traps, they're going to fire immediately.
The other thing about wax traps, a lot of coyote trappers will do that because they're trying to do everything they can to eliminate human scent. And that paraffin supposedly doesn't hold scent that well. So that's another that a lot of coyote trappers will do. For the trapping that we do, I don't think I've boiled and waxed a trap in 20 years.
You ever accidentally caught yourself? I noticed you got all your fingers.
I've got all of them, but if you look closely, not all of my fingernails grow normally anymore. So the answer is yes, I have.
The first time I caught myself, it took me 3 days to tell him I'd done it because I thought he was just going to laugh at me. He goes, "There's not a trapper alive that hasn't caught themselves at least once. Come on."
And you always remember the trap that caught you, the very model that caught you the first time. I'll never forget that.
Mine was a 220 conibear.
That's painful just hearing it.
I was inexperienced. I had not asked for help from my dad, and I was just messing around and trying to set those coils on the side. And before I was able to put before I was able to put that little safety latch over it, it popped back and just pinched my arm. But when that happened, it took the use of, I couldn't use that hard. So I only had one hand to try to get it. And I was fine. It just pinched my skin really bad, but it was not comfortable. I can assure you of that.
There's worse things that can happen on the trap line, though.
Oh, for sure.
You ever been sprayed by a skunk?
No. Ask Neil Hayes. He was with me when that happened.
I might have pulled your fingers into a winch.
It all grew back. So that's one of the things when we go out of state trapping, we always make sure we have a first aid kit. And when you get to a location, you check out, okay, where's the nearest hardware store, mechanic, and intensive care unit.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, the trapping thing is really fascinating, and I'm glad to see people getting interested in it for whatever reason. And I think it's a great way for young kids.
Getting the youth involved.
Yeah.
It's an active sport. You're not just sitting there, and they just take to it so well.
Yeah, we're really excited back home. My cousin's son, he's 23, just came to me about a little over a month ago and says, "I think there's some beaver down at Grandpa's." Can you help me catch them? Absolutely. So we were actually a few days late coming down to Louisiana this year because I was home trying to mentor my first cousin once removed. And he's jumped in.
He's ate up.
Oh, yeah. I taught him to clean skin beaver so you don't have to scrape them afterwards. And he's catching coon in the DPs. And he can't wait for us to get back so he can catch some more beaver. So, every once in a while you have those success stories kind of make you feel good and want you to keep on going. And hopefully we can get some more people involved like that too.
I just recently learned that the beaver castor is used in the perfume industry.
It's used in all kinds of things.
Yeah. And that got really high dollar there for a while. You could get more out of the castor from that beaver than you could at the hide there until the cowboy hat thing took off.
And the castor is the oil?
No, there's 2 different glands in the back of the beaver. Now, you've got your oil sacs, one on each side, but then the castor glands are the scent. Now the oil they'll use to help oil their skin and stuff or their fur, but the castor glands are just for their scent that they put up on the castor mound, mark their territory. Yeah, it's a very sweet smell.
When you come up to an area that's got beaver, you can smell it.
It's beaver hair.
Yeah.
I found one on some nearby public land recently, and it looks like just a small mound of leaves, about the size of a salt block, maybe a little like an ant mound. And you can get down on your hands and knees and put your nose near it. To me, I know this sounds crazy, but if you've ever gotten like an inflatable raft, it kind of smells like the new plastic smell to me, or almost like a new pair of rubber boots. It's kind of got that smell. But I know, like they use it in perfumes. It makes it stick to you. Correct?
I'm not sure. I
thought it makes the scent stick to your body, and that castor is a very long-lasting scent. But it works great. You can put some on your boots when you're walking to your deer stand and cover your scent up. It's got a lot of uses.
Yeah, a lot of lures that are made. Coyote lure, a lot of your professional coyote lure makers, they'll use a bobcat meat base with beaver maybe as well, some castor, some red fox urine, skunk essence, all this stuff they're mixing together to make lures. But
that's another fun hobby. It's making your lures and baits.
Now, most of the sets we're making, other than the DPs, are what we call blind sets. We know on that, well, there's one place we'll move to in a couple of weeks in Louisiana, a 6,000 acre farm. I want to catch an otter on that 6,000 acres. And I know a spot that big that it's going to step out of 6,000 acres.
Yeah, just like an 1.5 inch circle.
That's where I set my trap.
Wow. There used to be red wolves in Louisiana. I mean, and in the last 30 years, there was wolves in Louisiana.
Have the coyotes hybridized those out of existence, though?
I think they trapped all those wolves and carried them to North Carolina. There's a peninsula over there that they're trying to reintroduce.
I knew there were still some there, but any remaining probably would have been hybridized out then.
Probably so. I had a friend near Charlotte send me a photo that they got on a trail camera that it was a red wolf to me.
Do you guys ever go far enough north where you encounter? Have you ever trapped wolves?
No.
Myself, no. Now, a year ago, last November, we were with some friends in Montana, and he didn't have the wolf line out then, but we participated in a mountain lion hunt and did trap pine marten in live traps there for a relocation project. So we've been around some of the different habitats, different times of the year.
So you guys have been involved in relocation stuff?
Just minor there.
Yeah, just a little.
What's the toughest thing to catch?
Oh, good question.
Well, are you looking at the difficulty of the individual animal or the scarcity of the animal? Because I'd say weasels are difficult to catch in Ohio because there aren't that many of them. But as far as the smartest animal?
Yeah, like you versus this animal, wits wise.
Right now, there's an otter in Louisiana I'm working on. It's gotten personal.
We've caught 6 off this farm, but there's one that comes up this far from the trap and leaves a pile of scat.
Oh, he's flipping you the bird in his way.
Yeah, exactly. So that one is that's got personal. But
we have turkeys like that.
I was kind of expecting you to say coyotes for some reason.
I was thinking along those lines, but I know some coyote trappers that are very, very successful. They don't consider it that difficult at all because once you understand the animal, it isn't. I think that the key to there is that knowing the habits of that individual animal you're after. So I don't know that any one is more difficult than the other once you understand the basics there. We had some friends that went out to Oklahoma, and they were out there 9 days, these two guys. They caught 179 coyotes.
Wow.
Mull that number around in your head a little bit.
In 9 days.
It's just phenomenal, but the guy understands and knows coyotes.
That is his,
So-
he lives and breathes for that.
It's probably more involved process to catch the coyote than it is some of the other animals. So then in that respect, it would make it more difficult. But once you understand what's needed, it's kind of like the coyote or the cowboy and the horse, you know. There's never a horse that couldn't be broke or a coyote that couldn't be throwed or a horse that couldn't be rode, I guess the way it is. There's animals out there that, I can catch them all until you get the one that, nope, nobody can catch it.
Well,
So-
even easy stuff like raccoon, if you're not setting in the right place, then you're not going to catch very well. I mean, you wouldn't put a set like out in the middle of a big opening. I guess you would if that's where they're crossing the field, but like where a trail crosses a ditch, where a little road crosses a ditch, that's probably a good place to start. Or, if you're looking for coyote, maybe a little crossroads, where two logging roads cross would probably be a good place to start,
pinch points is one thing we refer to. Where animals are funneled down to a narrower location. It's always a good place for a set. But as far as difficulty, I had to think about that for a while because I don't consider any of them that difficult now. Just some take a little bit more preparation.
If you're walking a property and you see a coyote turd, are you going to pick it up and carry it for a set later on?
Might have been known to do that.
I've been around a lot of people that like get excited and they have a Ziploc in their pocket just for that.
A big bone, that's kind of visual. You can put a big cow femur right by your coyote set. They'll see that and they may want to run by that. That may be something they want to pee on. Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
So they see something like that. Well, you put that appropriately placed trap where that front left or right paw is going to land right there.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of tricks, but a lot of people use that or an old stump or something out in the middle of a field or
something that it has high appeal, something different. And if it doesn't exist, make it exist. Back when we were catching red fox back in Ohio before the coyote came in, if you had a hayfield, fox could play anywhere in that hayfield looking for mice. But if you took a bale of hay or straw out there in the early fall and just set it out on a high point in that field, just leave it there. Every fox come by would have to jump up on that bale and look around. So that was an attractant there in the middle of an open field that you could use then to catch the animal that way. So if it didn't have something that was already there, make something.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, that really is. What are we not asking, Bill? Is there something we need to cover here?
Well, I made some notes before we came in, and I was thinking a lot of us live in states where the wildlife laws are helpful to trapping, but there are certain states that don't have wildlife laws that are helpful, particularly to trapping. And would you like to talk about some of the consequences, the states that restrict trapping, what they have to deal with now? I mean, I think Massachusetts is one of those states that really stands out where they, without any consideration for wildlife management, they just decided no trapping is going to take place here. And now they have beavers that are doing extensive damage. You want to expand on that so we can just get that out?
What happened there in Massachusetts, like you said, they outlawed trapping and the beaver population naturally skyrocketed in some areas. And beaver do a lot of damage, or can. So now it's not that trapping is illegal, it's fur trapping was illegal. So now nuisance trappers have stepped up. They're getting paid now by either landowners or government entities or companies, logging companies, whatever it might be, to manage these beaver now. And so they're still trapping them, still using traps, but when they catch them, they have to throw them away.
They can't use them.
They can't use them.
Yeah.
Well,
What a waste.
Not legal to utilize a resource. So now we're wasting a resource. We're not saving anything. The animal rights people, we want to save the animals. No, the animals are going to die one way or another when they get in an overpopulated situation. So there's just an example, a very good one, Bill. That and the trappers there are probably making more money now than they did before because they can charge a lot more money for a nuisance removal than they could ever get out of that pelt. But there's still no logical reason, at least in my mind, that they couldn't at least utilize the resource. So, and California is another example.
California, in the same week, outlawed all fur trapping. They were down to very few trappers, less than 100, because the tools that were available to them were cage traps. That's all that was left. So people weren't doing it. And they said it's not worth the Division of Wildlife out there. It's not worth their time to sell these licenses and police this issue. So they outlawed fur trapping. And in the same week, they appropriated $10 million to trap nutria to eradicate them in California.
So illogical.
In the same week.
Yeah.
So illogical. But anyway.
Yeah, Colorado's been another challenge with some trapping laws. New Mexico recently outlawed trapping there on public lands.
By one vote.
In their state legislature. So, yeah, we have a lot of challenges around the country. Some of them you have to deal with legislatively. Other challenges are coming to the courts because the they're very good at utilizing something called the Endangered Species Act, which, in my opinion, needs some changes. We're working on that. But there's a little known thing in government that is called the Equal Access Under Justice Act. So the antis can sue the U.S. government to stop trapping. Who pays their legal fees? Well, the government does. Our government pays people to sue them.
Wow.
So we got a lot of challenges out there, particularly in some of your more liberal states. I mean, East Coast, West Coast are two of the biggest examples, but it's sneaking into Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. Be thankful you live in a hunter, angler, trapper friendly state.
So, we know, I think hunter numbers are going down. I'm not sure about trapper numbers. I link us together as, I think we're all on the same team. And you guys are representatives of the National Trapper Association. I know, people behave in different ways on social media and such, with photographs, and things like that. How do you guys recommend that hunters and trappers, if they were going to post a photo of a successful trapping spree, how do you suggest we go about that? Or is there a better way? We've got a lot of non-hunters out there that may be on the fence about things.
It's a good question, Doug.
Do you suggest that we just go ahead and show the gore, or do we try to tone that down a little bit? I mean, am I asking that wrong?
Well, you see, some people like showing a live coyote in a trap, baring his teeth, and sometimes I'm like, boy, I hope. I mean, not everybody would enjoy seeing that.
Now, if there's...
And is that where you're kind of going, Dudley?
I think so.
We've dealt with some of those situations around the country in the last several years. And I think the thing that alienates people the most is the gore. Avoid a picture that has any blood in it with a live animal. Okay? I think that's just a very simple one right there.
Yeah, respect. A respectful picture.
Yeah.
Show respect for the animal.
I know there's different opinions on that in the hunting and trapping community. Some people say, well, that's just the way it is. They can accept it. That's my right. Or do you just try to be a little bit more respectful? We were just talking about states that have outlawed a lot of hunting and trapping and things like that. So I would think that a lot of the reason that gets outlawed is because we are not careful with the way we share some of those photographs and things. And I hate to bring that up, and I hate to say
it's an important point because it's something we have to be conscious of, because public opinion is going to allow us to continue to do what we do or outlaws.
And we have the segment that are solidly in our corner, that we all live and breathe this. We have the segment that's going to be against us. Doesn't matter. What matters is that segment in the middle.
I agree.
And if we alienate the segment in the middle, we lose.
Yeah, and that's a big segment too.
It is. That's the biggest segment. You're talking
probably 80%.
more like 80%. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I saw a picture several years ago. A guy caught his first wolf. I think it was out in Idaho, and posted a picture of it in the trap. There was a lot of red snow in that picture.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't come across well. Now, just a coyote or a wolf or anything in a good setting and no blood and the animal's just there, no different than a hunter posing with their deer or their turkey, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we're not saying don't take those pictures.
Right.
Okay? Share them with your friends. Don't share them with everybody.
Right. And I'd like to point out that the design of these traps are very humane. They're designed to hold the paw, and we're trained to put that trap in the right place. So you're trying to catch that front paw. It's offset. There's something welded in this coil spring to where there's a gap right here. So it's not really completely closed on the paw. It's very humane in the way it's designed. You have these swivels built into them. So if the animal starts turning circles, it doesn't get all wrapped up. And there's so much that goes into the design of these things to make them very humane these days.
Well, to Dudley's point, if somebody's dog got in one of these traps, you could successfully release it.
Oh yeah, we do several every year actually.
There are some great trapping associations that do workshops on how to release your dog, or do pamphlets and go to different, not the trapping conventions, but go to community events and teach people how to release your dog, because it's simple.
Sure.
Yeah. And the trap doesn't do that damage. Like you say, the offset jaws and the rounded corners on those jaws is important too, to not have any cuts that are on the foot.
Yeah,
So we always have a few incidentals like that. We had a cat last week.
Yeah.
And it was in one of the 1.5 coil spring traps.
A house cat, not a bobcat.
With the rounded additions on the jaws, and opened it up, and that cat took off, and it was running on all fours just fine.
Yeah.
And I knew it was somebody's house cat, so I turned it loose.
Well, see, a lot of the public perception is that these traps have jaws with teeth, and that is so far from the truth.
That's Disney.
That is, and the equipment we're using today is some of the most humane equipment that ever has been. The wide surfaces, people use those traps and they successfully release animals unharmed all the time.
These are the same traps that are used for relocation projects.
Yep, right.
When they relocated otter, when they relocated any other species like that, wolves, they're trapped with the exact same traps that we use every day.
Yeah, I
not something
consider
special.
myself a very humane person. And I think we all do. We have pets and we love our pets, and it's just, I don't understand where people get these mindsets that they have, but it's just important that we're careful in the way we do things so we don't trigger those people that are in the middle on the fence, I guess you could say.
Karen, what are we forgetting? What are we not asking you about trapping that you need to tell? And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to look at Dave. And Dave, tell me, think about this. When we go back to her, she's going to tell me what she's what we've not asked. I'd like you to tell a good trapping story, one that something like some good story that I know you have. I can look at you and tell you got 1,000 good stories.
I don't know what there are ones I can tell here.
Well, it could have been really, not necessarily I caught 40 in a week. What was something cool you experienced, maybe something neat you've seen.
While you're thinking about that, Karen, tell us how to get in touch with the NTA and that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, the National Trappers Association, we have a website, nationaltrappers.com.
Or just Google it.
Or just Google it, please. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's .com, but please just Google it. Or your state association. The Mississippi Trappers Association it was revived about, Chip will kind of be like, I should know this, but 5-6 years ago, they made a huge impact at reviving their organization, and it is strong, it is thriving. They are a great group of people, and if you're in Mississippi, you need to get in touch with them. And I know they have a website, but you can Google that as well, Mississippi Trappers Association. They are also an affiliate of the National Trappers Association. Almost every state in the union that has a Trappers Association is a member, or what we call an affiliate, of the National Trappers Association as well. And I'm going to go ahead and give a plug for Fur Takers of America because it's the other national group. For a long time, National Trappers was more about the governmental stuff and the legislative issues, that kind of thing, and being more active there. And Fur Takers was more about the educational part of getting trapping information to people. And really now, we work so closely together. I'm not saying we're exactly the same, but we work together a lot. So Fur Takers of America, another national group. Most of the people in the leadership of both of those groups belong to each one. We support each other.
A lot of crossover.
Completely. A lot.
Support your conservation organizations, buy the hunting license, buy the duck stamps. We all need to be doing that.
And we all need to support each other. I think one of the biggest pushes with the National Trappers Association right now, we've had several conferences across the country trying to work together with other conservation organizations, other hunting groups, other angling groups. We need to support each other. Whenever something comes up, it's not us versus them. It is us versus them. We need to all stick together. So we need to support each other when those times come that we need the support and the help.
Well said.
I like to use a tank of gas as a reference point. Most of these conservation organizations, like the NTA, are less than a tank of gas to join a year, or maybe just a couple bags of fertilizer is another good reference. So join them, you know.
Yeah, most of them are about $30 a year.
Yeah,
that's in pocket change.
Yeah,
and if you really are on a fixed, like when we were a young family, and we have 2 daughters. When we were a young family, we bought a family membership. It was about $2 more, but then our whole family was connected. Our daughters felt as much of the organization. They felt a part of it. And to this day, they still are all about trapping and the outdoor pursuit. They all hunt.
Oh, that's good.
And one of them actually works for our Ohio Division of Wildlife.
right.
Oh, good. Dave, you got a good story now.
Well, it not so much just an individual story, but I will share one of the more interesting things that we do trapping, and that is the live otter market. Okay? When we go to Louisiana, we have a USDA licensed dealer in Ohio that takes live otter from us and supplies to zoos and aquariums all over North America. And actually, a few years ago, our contact then shipped some to China, too. So our goal is using one of those 1.5 coil spring traps. They're like on the table. We catch otter in those. And then it's my job to take that live otter from that trap and put it in a cage.
That sounds interesting.
It can get interesting. I call myself the otter whisperer.
So do you use the device that's looks like the PVC pipe with the cable kind of thing, like you would on a bobcat? Or
no, because an otter doesn't really have a neck.
No. And
if you put one in one of those devices, it can go berserk.
I'm thinking it's almost like a shark or an alligator. It just spins around. Or
I use a piece of black plastic drain tile, double walled, about 1 foot in diameter, about 3 feet long, with a sliding door on one end. I'll go up to the animal in the trap, and I'm talking to it the whole time, trying to keep it. It's about stress reduction, trying to calm down the animal and say, hey, this hole here is a good place to hide. You're stressed. Come in here. I'll take care of your problems, And most of them will then run in that tube. I shut the door. The door's got a little notch in it, so I can pull the trap and the foot outside of it. Open the trap up. The animal pulls its paw in. I've got it in the tube. Now, I made it sound easy.
Yeah, you did.
We've tried to teach this concept to several other trappers. Some of them are starting to get it, but it's a technique.
He's been doing it for 18 years.
I've been doing it a long time, and so I've got a lot of little nuances there that I can't share. I mean,
you probably use the force a little bit.
Yes.
Well, yeah. And I tell people it's a little bit like, have you ever taken a skunk out of a live trap?
I've heard. Don't you put a blanket over it?
Exactly. The technique that I use is, again, you talk to the animal the whole time you're coming up to the trap. Use that calm voice. Don't yell or scream or make any sudden movements. Skunks don't like surprises. So go up very calm and gently, take a blanket or a sheet or something and carefully place it over that live trap. Then you can pick that up and move that skunk anywhere, and it's going to feel secure inside that. So I use kind of that same technique with the otter. And instead of the blanket, I'm providing that too, but I'm still using that same voice, trying to keep that animal calm and make it feel a little safer when I get there. So that's probably one of the more unique things that we do. It's a very limited market. This year we don't have any orders, but the last several years we have, and we've made a little money off of that. But that's probably the most interesting and fun thing that we do.
I didn't know you could calm a skunk down talking to it.
Oh yeah, you can calm them down.
Yeah.
Can we talk quickly about the way to properly dispatch a skunk to try to keep it from spraying?
The technique that I try to use when it's live in a trap is again that 22 rifle. I try for a chest shot. It's not always a guarantee that it won't spray, but we've had maybe 50% that don't.
Oh gosh, that's not a great number.
Not a great number.
That's exactly what I've heard. You hit the nervous system, they almost always spray.
They're going to spray. Now, some trappers will carry the proverbial 10-foot pole with a syringe on the end with acetone in it. And again, you talk to the skunk, keep it calm, and you walk up there 10 feet away, and the skunk will face you at this point, and they'll get a chance. They'll put that syringe right there in the skunk's chest, and when they get the opportunity, they quickly give it a shot of acetone in the chest cavity. Within seconds, the skunk will lay down and die.
That's an ethical way. Okay.
Yeah. And it almost always does not spray. Now, if you miss, you're jamming around trying to find it, no, you're going to make it spray. You've got to, again, have that technique and just give it a quick shot of that and back off.
That's interesting.
Do mink eat turkey eggs? That's kind of random, but
I don't know.
I don't know why not.
Yeah.
They eat meat and fish. So.
I just rarely.
Mink are opportunists.
I think they're more common than people think. Are they?
What, mink? Mm-hmm. Depends on where you are. Now, in Louisiana, they're very common around the crawfish farms. Other places in the country, they might be pretty rare. Okay. Depends on the aquatic habitat that's available.
That's an interesting animal.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Has your wife got a mink coat?
My mom does.
Yeah, my mom did too.
Karen's got one.
I have one.
Yeah.
So, what did we learn, Dudley?
Gosh, where do I start? I know that I enjoy trapping. I know that it's a good thing. You combine good habitat with a little bit of trapping, and you can have a better habitat, better ecosystem.
Yeah. I think I've learned about these raccoon trails. I don't know that I've paid enough attention. I'm doing around feeders, probably like what most people are, I assume. But I'm going to start kind of trying to pay attention to that a little bit.
We're driving down the interstate, and he'll be driving, and he'll go, "You see that coon trail over there? Did you see that coon trail over there?"
Usually coming out from under a culvert.
Mm-hmm. Oh, culverts.
Yeah.
Good spot.
Through the grass, you can just see that little worn trail right out of the culvert. That's 9 times out of 10, that's a coon trail.
Bill, is there anything else we need to make sure we cover?
Well, I think we covered the bases, how people can get involved in trapping. This is one of the times when the deer seasons are shutting down. People are looking for something to do that they can make a huge difference on their property, and trapping is one of those things. I mean, we're really busy right now. People are coming in, they're buying supplies because they're ready to start setting traps out. As the deer season's winding down, they're ready to do something so they can be prepared for turkey season. The educational aspect of it, National Trappers Association, your state trappers associations, they are all available and excellent resources for you to utilize. They're just there. They're there for you, to serve you, to help you learn more about being a good trapper. I'm just thrilled that Dave and Karen could make the trip up here.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah.
And open up those ideas for us, because I know that a lot of your viewers are going to be interested in doing that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And let's not forget Duke Traps. So, guys, you can Google Duke Traps. You guys have a great website, very informative itself, and you make a great product. I can't go anywhere, and we tell people, well, we're from West Point, Mississippi. They'll say, well, that's where Duke Traps is. Do you know Bill
get out of
Duke?
here, man. That's what people say to me. They say, hey, that's where Mossy Oak is. West Point, oh, man, you're in a famous town.
And we've talked about some of the educational opportunities, especially for youth. one of the biggest supporters we have for those across the country is Duke Traps.
Hit the horn, Richie. Wake up, Rich.
Sorry, I was running the camera too.
Yeah, there we go. My bad.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we Duke Traps is it's awesome. And
Is anybody going to be at the National Wild Turkey Federation National Convention
there
this
is-
February?
There is. Our president, John Daniel, will be there working the booth this year.
Excellent.
Dave and I, just schedule-wise, we were doing it on our way home from
Right.
trapping in Louisiana, and finding a place to put our trailer to plug in freezers and all that kind of stuff
Right.
just became problematic.
Well, I'm going to sit here and challenge every listener that's going to the convention to walk up to that booth and join the National Trapping Association
Thank you.
and encourage their friends to do the same.
And you will get to meet the president. I mean, he's been the president for the last 4 years, and a lot of the coalition building that we're doing and that we've sunk a lot of money into and time and effort is because of him.
does he have all his fingers?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and he's a contractor too. So but no,
Lives
just,
dangerously.
again, thank you for allowing us to be part of this podcast here today. It's a great opportunity for us and for trappers to get their message out. We certainly appreciate this opportunity, and glad Bill called us to invite us up here today.
Oh, it's been great.
Well, thank y'all for making a difference and leading by example and just being awesome people. I met 2 new friends
Yeah,
today.
it's great to see a couple doing this. I mean, I can see y'all's love for each other, and y'all. It's neat to see, and I just imagine y'all have a lot of fun. And,
We do. Yep.
Dudley, you need to get Kelly involved.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do. So, well, if there's nothing else, I'm looking at Richie. He just woke up, and Bill, you got a big smile on your face. Well, boy, the weather driving home is going to be rough on y'all. Y'all be careful.
But this was a perfect opportunity. We pulled the traps on the farms where we were because we'd caught most of the animals there. Now we get to do something enjoyable like this indoors while all this rain is coming down. I don't have to be out on the bike checking traps.
There you go.
We can wait till it stops raining and then go set another line. So it worked out great for us too. Thank you.
Good. Love it when things work out. Bill, thank you for coming down here.
Hey, thank you so much. I had so much fun last time, and I knew what to expect this time a little bit more, and it's been a lot of fun. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, we enjoyed it. I'm looking around the room. I'm trying to see if there's anything else left to be done. Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley. Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.